Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, this particular case is very interesting. It starts off with a Jane Doe that's found. Interestingly enough, this same Jane Doe is connected to a case from 18 years ago. This woman named Autumn was murdered. Granted, over the course of this case, they ended up solving that case, but sadly, the killer is dead. And it's kind of this complex situation because it turns out, like, the wife, she kind of had a feeling like he was the murderer at the time. She never said anything because, like, well, her children were young, didn't want to have those children remember their father as a murderer. That would have just been a whole complicated thing. But it's like, hey, they're old enough now where the chips lie. If it comes out that he's a killer, then so be it. But it turns out, like, obviously he had different girlfriends, Autumn being one of them, plus he was abusive towards her, so I'm sure that contributed to more reasons why you kind of, in certain those cases, I think there are times where people who have been abused kind of defend their abuser just because, you know, the psychological damage from it kind of creates that, like, that type of relationship in that regard. But nevertheless, so it turns out that that dude was the killer behind Autumn's death, but obviously he's dead now. He's been dead for like 10 years, so he had nothing to do with Jane Doe, who turns out to be, her name is Camille, which, interesting enough, it turns out she has a sister who was addicted to heroin who had died 10 months earlier named Regina, but then it's kind of like, oh, maybe those are two separate things, but it turns out they're actually connected because it turns out all of them were killed in the same manner, and the fact is that they were hit with a stun gun and then killed in different regards. Like, Regina was given an overdose of heroin and made it to look like she overdosed because she had an addiction issue. And then there's Camilla, who was, suffocated. And so there's also a private detective named Lim who was connected to all of this too. In fact, Camille had hired him to look into Regina's situation because there were things on the autopsy that the medical examiner at the time had missed. The fact is there was bruising there that was consistent with, like, the stun gun. It's actually kind of interesting because you can kind of see Gregson kind of go like, this is kind of on you. Like, if you had realized it was kind of a murder back then, maybe wouldn't be in a situation we are right now where, both, Lim as well as Camille are dead. So two other people are dead in this situation, kind of because you messed up your job back then. To a certain extent. Granted, at that time, they only knew about Camille's death, not Lim's, but still. So it turns into this whole thing of, like, okay, so it might have been her DJ boyfriend at the time. It was named, like, Panda Salt. And I love that whole situation of Jones waking up and, like, oh, what is that? And it's like, goes to Sherlock's room and he's got a DJ. What's her name? Like, Otto Kitten or whatever, which is so interesting. It's like getting her musical ear to find similarities with other DJs' music so they can find out who Panda Salt really is. And it turns out it's a whole complicated thing of, yeah, they dated, and it was issues, sure, but not to the point he would kill her. Turns out she actually had his kid, and it was a whole thing of, like, she was going to give the child away for adoption, but she decided not to. And then it turns out, wait, the charity lady, I kind of already got that feeling from the beginning, like, usually, once again, crime dramas and stuff like that, it's usually the person you least suspect. It's usually the person that might pop up once, who pops up the least in an episode tends to maybe be the killer, but it's interesting. It's also interesting, too, because, like, the whole Camille situation, too, of, like, her body was moved by the landlord or whatever because he didn't want people looking too much into his business because he was housing this apartment to, like, 20 models, and it's actually kind of a sad, twisted, like, situation of, like, okay, basically a large chunk of their income goes towards paying for the rent, so it kind of leaves very little for them, so they're kind of stuck in this perpetual, almost living check to check type of lifestyle, which is kind of a sad situation, especially because some of them are from their different country too, so it just makes it worse because it seems like you're taking advantage of them. So it was just, like I said, it was just kind of a messed up thing on his part. But getting to it, it's actually sad because the killer was the lady who was running the charity, like I was saying, for helping people with drug addictions. And it's sad because she used that to kind of cover up the fact is that she murdered Regina. But the fact is, Regina had backed out of wanting to give her baby away for adoption and being the one who set that whole situation up, because she's most likely, and I think they said it specifically, that she has helped other people, parents with addiction issues, give their children up for adoption, and her setting that whole situation up, she gets a cut of the pay, and the fact is she would have missed out on this payment because of Regina. So what she did was she ended up killing her, and I guess like putting her child up into, they never answered that, did they? Maybe they did. Maybe that was something that just kind of handled off screen, because it's never like we tracked down the baby, giving it back to Panda Salt, because that's technically his child. I don't know if they necessarily did that. It's kind of sad because even Camille, the baby's aunt's not around either. So it's like you would at least want a silver lining. Go, at least the baby's aunt's around. I mean, the dad's around, sure, but it's just, I don't know. It's just a sad situation, especially going to grow up knowing what happened to your mom and your aunt. I mean, because that's the whole situation, dude. Because like Camille and Regina have fell out of sorts for months because Regina's addiction issues and just Camille, and that's why Camille regretted her death so much. It hit her so hard because they were not in as close as they should have been. But that's also why she probably wanted to look into it to find out, like, who's the drug dealer who sold it, and not find out, obviously ended up coming across this whole murder covered up to look like an accidental overdose. But nevertheless, it's just kind of interesting to me that you would do that over one adoption, that you would kill someone and make it look like a suicide. Well, not suicide, but a drug overdose. But I guess like maybe she gets a good chunk of money for it, and it's just like, oh, how dare you change your mind on me? There might be a part of her that kind of looks down upon him because it's like, oh, you have an addiction and stuff like that. Once again, it's just the irony behind it, because she's supposed to be helping people, but it's like, well, you're probably helping them so you can eventually help yourself, fill your own pocket. So nevertheless, there's that side of things. Then we get the whole situation with Odin this episode. He came to visit Sherlock and Watson, because I figured he was going to kill Watson. I figured he was just going to come visit her, but it wasn't like a one-on-one. He goes to visit her and Sherlock because he heard Sherlock looking into it. Like, even with the discreet channels Sherlock was searching through, talking to SIS agents, turns out Odin found out about it. He's like, literally no government agency across the world, they might all have respect for you, but they wouldn't dare jeopardize their relationship with me, showing just how far his reach is, how powerful he is. So no one's going to back their play on this. The NYPD would, but even they'd kind of be caught in the crosshairs. That's why they're not being added to this whole situation, because they wouldn't, because especially Bell and Gregson, like Gregson, you can make the argument, well, he made some questionable choices in the past, but at the same time, it's like, he is a man of the law, and, and definitely Bell is, so it's like, yeah, Odin has his way of going about things, but it's like, it's not the right way to go about things. I understand why you're doing it, still doesn't make it right. I mean, that's the whole reason why there's the whole law system. It's not perfect in any shape or form, but, it's the only thing you kind of got. If you don't, world kind of turns into the Wild Wild West, essentially. I don't know, it just adds that interesting dynamic, because like I said, you can understand where Odin's coming from, and a lot of people probably would side with him, but at the same time, you kind of side, because that's the whole thing that Sherlock is trying to do this episode, him and Watson, is to show, like, there's another way to this situation. It's like, because once again, Odin wasn't even sure, 100% sure. He's like, I'm kind of 80% sure, but there's still a 20% possibility, because it all stems from the fact is that, Wesley Conrad, basically, he does this, like, history kind of podcast, and basically this dude named Ewan basically ripped it off, basically got a big money deal to make it into a documentary and whatnot. So that's what this is all about, that it could have been a situation of, his movie or documentary is getting screened, and a lot of people could have turned into a terrible cinema situation on, Conrad's part. But Sherlock tried to find different means of helping the situation, like, without getting violent. It's like, hey, get him in contact with some very good lawyers to help out with his situation. Even Conrad was at one point, Sherlock talks about the fact that he was looking at things very positively. And then it's just a little tidbit, a thing I just think kind of fascinating. Johnny Lee Miller, obviously British, and the fact is that obviously to get into Conrad's house, he does an American accent. In particular, you can tell him kind of doing like a New York accent, which is so crazy to me because like I don't know if I've ever talked about this before. Like I'm gonna say Sherlock. Elementary is kind of the thing I'm most familiar with Johnny Lee Miller. I'm not that familiar with a lot of his work. Like I know there's a movie I associate with him, like from early 2000s. I want to say it was like the early 2000s, maybe like 2004, 2005, 2006, somewhere around that area. It's a movie called Mindhunter, which I really liked. I've seen it multiple times, but it's been many, 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 many years since I've seen it. And I kind of forget because, like I say, like Elementary has become the one thing I've kind of known him best for. Because once you're kind of known for something in my head, I kind of like associate you with that. There are exceptions depending on if like there's multiple things I kind of know you for. But like I know him for Mindhunters, but like it kind of got blocked in my head. I think now is the first time in years I've thought about the movie Mindhunters. You know, so like I said, so it's just interesting because I'm so used to him speaking in his natural British accent that it just doesn't correlate in my head. Like, oh yeah, until he did an American accent, I was like, right. I don't even like because I know there's another movie he's famous for too. It was like a hacker movie, wasn't it? Like way back in the day, wasn't it like the late '90s or early 2000s? I don't remember. I think it was something with Angelina Jolie, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Did they date back in the day? Regardless, I'm going on a huge tangent. But there was another show he did. Wasn't it called like Eli Stone? I wasn't that familiar. I think it's like a lawyer show. Regardless, that was many years ago as well. I'm going on a huge tangent. I just thought it was kind of interesting. He was able to get Conrad's guns and whatnot. But he was even telling Watson, he's like, yeah, we're not going to stop there. So we're going to go a little further. And, you know, Sherlock actually goes to Conrad and it's like, no. You were right. Your information was right. He did get guns and whatnot, so he could have done something dangerous, but we handle things my way. But Conrad's like, no, he's still dangerous. But it's like, no, what we're going to do is leave it in the hands of the cops. I let them kind of tipped it off that, hey, he might be a little dangerous. I made sure at the screening there was a little more security and whatnot. This is how we handle things. Like, we don't have to get violent. You know, we don't have to kill people just to save lives and whatnot. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can do both. You can save both lives and help avert kind of a terrible situation. And it actually kind of got, you know, Odin thinking is like, hey, maybe you're right. Maybe we can find another way. Maybe if I do decide to kind of, because it's like you have the resources, you can make it a situation where rather than just killing these people, you can have people on top of them investigating, keeping an eye on them, making sure they don't do anything drastic, kind of step in when necessary, but always keep an eye on them, make sure they're kind of going down the right path, that they don't steer too far away. But it's like, it costs a lot of money, but it's like, hey, you got like a crap ton of money. You have the resources to make it happen. So do this, because otherwise you're just going down a path where it's like, yeah, killing people is just the easier solution. Rather, you know, I mean, because there are complicated situations. It's like, yes, because the thing is, you can never be 100% sure of what someone's going to be. Intent is a big thing, but not everyone acts upon their intent. Humans are complex in that nature, that a lot of people could be super pissed, they could act a certain way, but that doesn't, you know, because even Sherlock, I brought up examples before to Odin about some of his cases where it's like, yeah, if you notice this, this, and this, that person might not have been a danger. That's what it comes down to. There's no guarantees in this situation. Yeah, there have been some situations averted, which is like, yeah, it worked out in some cases for Odin. There's the cases of the dude that was going to blow up that, you know, boat ferry or whatever, like that situation. Yeah, but like I said, it's complicated. It leaves you, like I said, feeling conflicted, because you, like I said, you see Odin's side of things, but you also see Sherlock's side of things. It's just kind of like, there's the way things work. There's the right way and there's the wrong way. The wrong way might seem like the right way because you're saving lives, but at the same time you're still killing people to get it done. And it's just like it's just a complicated thing. And it's like, oh, when it's all said and done, does that mean you and Watson will work with me? And it's like, just call us and we'll see, you know? But sadly, when it's all said and done, it turns out Ewan wasn't attacked. He was saved and everything. But it turns out that Conrad killed his parents and then killed himself. And that kind of strikes Odin to be like, well, because Sherlock's like, nothing in your data said anything about him having issues with his parents. And it's like, well, no, but my data showed that he was a killer and I was right. So basically now 2 innocent people are dead because of your actions. One terrible person could have been removed from the board and 2 innocent people would still be alive. So he's kind of putting that on Sherlock and Watson. And now it's probably going to, they're not going to, it still probably might make them slightly question themselves because, yeah, they were right to handle things the way they did, but maybe there is some validity to what Odin does. That becomes the question in itself. There's validity in what he does, but it doesn't make it right. But my question is that really what happened? Or did Odin do all that just to prove a point to be like, no, I'm right? Is he so narcissistic in this situation that he's so intent on being this avenging angel trying to stop everything before it happens that he set up that thing to be like, no, I am sure that, Conrad would have committed something later on. There was no backtracking. The fact of the matter is he needed to be dealt with. And so I set the situation up to kind of further my point so that Sherlock and Watson aren't looking into it. But maybe when they do potentially look into it in the future, they might find out like, whoa, this is a setup. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it is just the point is to show that it is a complex situation, that people are complex. Like, data's not going to show you everything, but it points you in enough a direction of like, you need to make swift action, but it's like, you're still killing someone. Like I said, there's a lot of nuance to this whole situation, so I just kind of find it fascinating. So I'm curious at the end of the day where this is all going to go forward from here, because now he's not going to side with Sherlock and Watson. It's like, oh, I can't trust your judgment. This was kind of like a one last test to kind of get you guys on my side, to kind of show that, hey, I can handle things a different way. But it's like, no, I'm going to handle things my way from now on, because your way of handling things doesn't get results. My way ends with just one person dying, that's the bad guy, and innocent people surviving. So, and once again, as we can tell, a lot of people support him. A lot of different governments, government agencies side with him. So it's kind of just Sherlock and Watson on their own. Potentially Gregson and Bell if they join in on this too, but it's also, they don't want to get the people that they care about involved in all of this. So it's a sticky situation to find themselves in. So they're potentially going to be in Odin's crosshairs from now on, because it's like, oh, if you interfere, you're just as bad because you're helping side with these evil people who are going to commit these evil atrocities that lead to people dying. I'm sure that's how Odin's going to justify it. Like I said, it all comes down to whether this was orchestrated or whether this whole Conrad situation did play out the way it did. I could easily see it going either way, and I'd be fine with either way, how they'd handle it. But I'm very interested to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.